Personal login to number 5055. It is 17:08 hours of March the 18th of 2024. I'm learning to connect to different people and to integrate into different kinds of being by integrating into different facets of my consciousness. Now, when I say different facets of my consciousness, the more colloquial way of expressing this would be co-creating with different people, working with different people, different entities, connecting to different entities. And the thing is that this entire universe, in a way, is my own consciousness. We can look at it in different layers. Now, there's the different layers in context to non-physical consciousness and different layers in context to physical consciousness. This is what we get when we start looking at different densities. You can break densities into corresponding breadths, if you will, of physical reality, or breadths of consciousness, non-physical. Take, for instance, we look at the oversoul levels in non-physical, and then we look at collective levels in the physical reality. And by physical reality, I mean reality that has any physics or dynamics to it. Not a reality that is dynamic-less, if you will, that is without any kind of rules. The way you make rules is by allocating tasks to your own consciousness. You allocate that consciousness to behave a specific way, literally. That's it. And that's what it means to create higher fractal consciousness. Because otherwise it's all lower fractal consciousness. So, how do I work what I'm doing? How do I finish integrating into a multidimensional type of being? Well, the first thing to do is to just... Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and just tour my consciousness a little bit. And ask the question, what do I want? Because if we look at my current situation, parts of me want to work on the garden, parts of me want to stay connected with my twin flame, and parts of me want to enjoy the Earth Collective. I was working with Pagani, and just walking with him in my dream state. Was working with Horatio Pagani. We were just talking and experiencing different consciousness. There was a distinct reality around the both of us as we were walking. It was in something that was kind of akin to a shopping mall. I remember first just looking at the cars. I was, looking at some of the different Paganis, and we run into each other. Now, how we ran into each other is really interesting, because before that, I remember being in some tunnel on something akin to a train track, disappearing into some house. It was like a miniature railroad or something, disappearing into some house. I remember being in like a hotel type of thing, got lost. It's like the rooms suddenly, a door that led to one place suddenly leads to elsewhere, and now I'm confined in these, like between these rooms. And I remember there being a kind of miniature railroad type thing. I remember eventually ending up in this house. Again, doorways leading to different places were shifting. I remember being on the stairs, and I don't remember if somehow I ended up out of the house or what happened there. I don't know the continuity of these events, but I do know that I think somehow I got out of one of those two places, walked into this building, and this is where I ran into Pagani. Remember the Zonda Cinque, and I encountered a Huayra that paid homage to the Zonda Cinque. And this is where I ran into Horatio, and the consciousness kind of started to shift out of there as we just walked. The building blended into a mall. I ran into a store that I'd seen before. It had a bunch of wind chimes in it. The Grace Note chimes were rare because Grace Note had gone out of business. And so I rang the chimes, caught back up with Ratio, and we just kept talking about all kinds of different stuff just two people might talk about. We're both artists, and so I remember running into a few Grace Notes, including a 4-note Earth song that's smaller than the one that I have. It was tuned differently. I think there was like a 4-note Island Melody or something. A lot of interesting chimes. And then we kept going, and it was really interesting. So why do I go into detail with the dream state? What does this have to do with now? This has to do with the multidimensional existence, because there's a very kind of free-flowing, fluid way of existence that we can integrate into in our awakened state, in effect existing the same way that we do in the dream state. And so we go back, in light of that, to the current status of things here. Now, the garden is part of my mom's reality as it's a part of mine, and she has certain things that she wants to do with it that do not match thematically with what I want to do. It's not so much that we disagree on what plants we want in the garden or anything like that, but more how to get things to there. We would end up with disagreements, and I know that what I was doing was right because I got to know these plants. I've worked with them for a long time and gone through the learning process and all of that. She hadn't, but she thinks she knows better. And so, basically, the problem is that she would not listen to me. Like, why do you want to do it that way? And I would explain to her very clearly why. But she was asking from a more closed perspective. And eventually frustrations just built up in me more and more over this whole situation. Like, it was a really deep and profound frustration in me over this. Why don't you just let me do my thing, and I can go ahead and bring the garden to fruition in your vision, and that kind of thing. We can trace components of this in my being. Because Mom's part of me, I can shift my own being to where a version of her that's more easily able to perceive me can come to fruition, because we both want the same thing. We both want a garden. We both want certain plants there. We both want everything looking nice and elegant and clean. We both basically want the same thing. So what there is for me to do is to go ahead and clear up the resistant energy and the acclimation to conflict, to confrontation, to fighting over this, to struggle. And we let go of all the resistant energy and just let this come to fruition. We get used to the idea of it coming to fruition seamlessly, fluidly, and then where there's excitement and no resistance, the excitement comes to fruition. That's how consciousness works. Consciousness goes to where it wants to go if it's not choosing against itself. So that's what we're looking at here. And put more simply, there are two ways that we could approach the idea of me wanting thematically the garden. Where if Mom wants something different thematically, then I go ahead and do my own thing outside of her reality. The other thing is to shift into a version of her that wants to do the same thing that I want to do. Both of which are very easy to do if you know to do it, and if you're not holding on to a ton of resistance. If you're holding on to a ton of resistance, troubleshoot. Work with each bit of resistance one piece at a time. Why can't you go down, the road that you're wanting to go down? Ask yourself that question. If you want to do something, why can't you do it? And that immediately causes you to have to answer with your beliefs. And then you can look at the things that cause you to come up with those beliefs. Reevaluate. Go back to the basics. Go back to the fundamentals of how consciousness works. and then return to the thing that caused you to give the answer that you did. Reevaluate that, and then ask yourself the question again. Why can't I go down that road? And if there's a new resistance that comes up or the same old resistance, repeat the process. And just keep working with it. Keep getting to know yourself. Keep getting to understand your consciousness and getting to understand consciousness itself. And that will help clear up all of these different kinds of resistant energies. Now, I was prompted to pull out the log from this situation by seeing the answer to type 1 being in this. Type 1 beings, with Aradif, because he is type 1, he's not going to do anything to change my reality, because this is my being. So the part where I'm trying to force a garden with my mom, that doesn't work for 2 reasons. 1, because that is not the version of reality that she is choosing to experience in certain components. And 2, that happening itself is not what I really want to experience. I don't want to fight. I just want to explore the consciousness that I want to explore. So we have to do the job right. That means we go ahead and do it in our own consciousness. We are infinitely abundant in reality. Or we go ahead and integrate into the version of her that wants to do things that way. Or we find another thing that we want to do more. Because chances are, if there's one thing that's blocked off, there's something else that we can do that will also resonate. Source loves all things. So all we have to do is just find something that resonates with us. And yes, it is true. If all of the excitements are blocked off, then something major would have to change. And so these kinds of things do happen. And that's where you would have to work with your own consciousness and decide where you want to go from there. And again, using the techniques to examine your beliefs and evaluate which ones you want to hold on to, and to get to understand consciousness will be extremely useful with this. That way you can go ahead and have the experience that you want to have as an entity. So, now that we've iterated all of this, let's go back to one of the questions that we were looking at. How do we integrate into this kind of multidimensional existence? And the first thing to do is to take a look at where our excitements are. And this is the thing that caused us to go into detail with the dream state and all the other things that are currently going on. Because some of the people with whom we create will be able to create things a certain way, while others will be able to create things other ways. So that's a significant thing to highlight here. And so we have to just simply get to know and understand what experience we want to have in the moment. Do we want to be with certain people? Do we want to do certain things? What do we want? All these questions have to be answered first, and then we can go ahead and start building to that. And so, if we want to integrate into multidimensional experience, the first thing we do is we let go of all the things that say we can't do that. And so if there are people that are saying that we can't do that, we're choosing to exist in that consciousness for one reason or another, either because it's reflective of our own beliefs or because it's reflective of our own beliefs about whether we can integrate into that multidimensionality, or it's reflective of what we believe in it to be, independent of our beliefs about what we can do. And then there's the matter of excitement to co-create with specific consciousness, combining with beliefs about what that consciousness is or what it can be, our characterization of it. So we can work with that in that way. I don't really want to disconnect from Mom, so I want to go ahead and continue to work with her. So that means that I have to be open to the different things that co-creation can be. So that means I have to go ahead and open up to all the different things that she can know and that she can do, and drop a bunch of the cycles between she and I that I've been holding on to. That will free up a lot of the consciousness. I've done this before, it works. So And by the way, when it comes to belief, well, this was something I was thinking about noting before, but I don't know if this is going to hold anymore. Do not believe based on physical reality. Do not have your belief based exclusively on your physics. Remember, life is what you have it be. So in that way, you got to start there. And if you don't see that, then you can take a look at your life. Truth speaks for itself. Go take a look at your consciousness. Go back to the basics and go take a tour in consciousness. If you have an excitement to know something, you will set yourself up in consciousness to know it. Your reality, which is your consciousness, will set yourself up to learn specific things. All the pieces of your reality will fall into place. You will be where you need to be, to perceive certain things, and you will also encounter the prerequisite things to have the mentality and the prerequisite knowledge to know or discover something that you want to know or discover. Provided, of course, that you're open to that possibility. If you're not open to that possibility, go back to the basics. Life is what you have it be, so on and so forth. Get to understand how reality is what you have it be, and then you can go ahead and start choosing what you have it be. This is all about connecting with the self. That means you have to be open with yourself. And that means you have to learn that you can be open with yourself. And this means working through a lot of consciousness. If you have desire to do this, work together with your reality, following your heart, and you'll be able to go ahead and put the pieces of this together, working through all the different facets and layers of resistance. So there's that. Type 1 beings. Aradif would not intrude or try to change my reality. It does not resonate with him to do that, because he does not need to do that for his own themes, and he loves me for who I am. He loves consciousness for what it is. He loves things just the way they are, and has enough room for himself to explore anything. If he wants to experience something differently, he'll just go simply experience something differently. He'll live the reality that's different. All reality, every conceivable thing exists as part of creation and can be experienced in every conceivable way. So, knowing that life is what, and knowing also that life is what you have it be, the choice is yours, really. There's no restriction, there's no limitation. And because everything is one, everything is also its choice in every one of its components. Everything is a part of me when we look at myself as source. Doesn't matter whether you're looking at it from the perspective of this human being, or the human being that I am, or any other human being, or any animal, or any insect, or any atom, anything of any kind. Is a perspective from which source can experience life. And everything else is also a part of that source in its body of consciousness. So, it can be a little bit tricky to really perceive and understand that. But if you understand the nature of existence from experiencing yourself, it's not that hard to figure this out logically. But you do have to see beyond just this physical reality to do that. And incidentally, this physical reality, and I look at it for my case, but it should work for pretty much anybody. You look at that, and the history of that, everything that you've experienced it as, if you look at it all completely, what it's been speaks for itself, especially if you look at your own being alongside it. If you do that, you look at what it's been, and you look at what you've been, you look at your history, every detail, all the way down to the smallest piece, If you look at all of that together, that speaks for itself. If you look at it together with your heart, and given wherever your excitement is, will help you to see whatever it is that you're looking for in it. Many things can be made of it. So, many perceptions. Everything is open in that way. Its source is openness to itself. So knowing this, when we go ahead and let go of the need to change anything or anyone, and we realize that we can live life out of pure excitement, and everything can just happen to be perfect for us, knowing that it is our own consciousness, that we are one. That's why it's perfect for us in that way, because it's our own body of consciousness working with us. Seeing that, the next thing to do is to see if the way that we characterize life precludes a multidimensional existence. In other words, are we choosing against ourselves with respect to the idea of living beyond a single continuity, and instead holding an openness of perspective that's enough to encompass all of continuity, all different continuities, to where we can literally live the same way we live in a dream state. That's the next thing for us to check. We have to understand what our consciousness is doing. Is it because we're with certain people and our excitement to be with those people in the way that their being is greater? Do we want to shift the version of their being that we experience? What do we want to do? All of these things we have to go ahead and evaluate. Multidimensional experience is something that absolutely can be done by anyone. It's not something that anybody's restricted from in a fundamental sense. It's just something that you could simply not choose. So if you want to choose it, you have to understand what you're choosing now to change the way that you are choosing so that you have it. And it's very important to know where all of your excitements are and all of the things that you want to do. That way you can really satisfy your excitements and not leave any part of yourself out. This concludes this entry.